branch lines of North America. Once they filled hundreds of pages in the official guide and provided service to countless smaller communities. But things seldom stay the same, and as times changed, so did the branches. While trucks, deregulation, and a new way of doing business spelled doom for many lines, others saw new life as industry spread to rural areas, and in some cases, independent short lines revived branches deemed marginal by the Class 1 roads. The transition is far from complete. While some lines now prosper under new ownership, others continue to cling to life carrying a minimum of traffic. Still others, with little hope of prosperity, have been stricken from the timetables of their former owners. Their future now relegated to the status of hiking and snowmobile trails. While the 5 branches we cover are located in southern Ontario, the scenario of branch lines in transition can be seen throughout North America. West of Toronto, extending from the St. Lawrence and Hudson's Galt subdivision, 2 historically different branches continue to prosper. While steam once ruled the CPR branches around Woodstock, Canadian Pacific's Preston-based electric lines employed electric freight motors and interurban cars. While passenger service ended in 1955, the freight motors did not succumb to diesels until 1961. Woodstock, located 88 miles west of Toronto on the St. Lawrence and Hudson's Galt sub, sees not only plenty of main line activity, but is also home terminal to several road switcher assignments, including the Kami job and the St. Thomas Road Switcher, both of which serve the auto industry. The Kami Auto Plant, 10 miles south of Woodstock on the St. Thomas sub, produces Suzuki Sidekick and GMC Tracker vehicles. The Kami job's chop-nosed Jeeps hauling cuts of tri-levels through Ingersoll and Beachville never fail to attract attention. Just south of Woodstock at mile 0.77, the St. Thomas sub crosses CN's busy Dundas subdivision. A CN welding crew is performing some regular maintenance work just before a Via train and the Kami job interrupt their progress. Once Windsor-bound Via 73 clears the interlocking limits, the Kami's crew takes the signal and clatters across the diamond. After the short uphill pull to Woodstock, the tri-levels are spotted for pickup by mainline trains that will expedite this hot traffic to destinations throughout North America. A second Woodstock local, the St. Thomas Road switcher, has just crossed the CN Diamond and is heading west with a train of covered hoppers for the potash facility at Putnam. A Ford assembly plant located on the CN near St. Thomas provides even more auto traffic for the branch, and a pair of tri-levels are lifted at Beachville before continuing south. Along with auto traffic, the large potash facility at Putnam is also a good source of revenue. Once the hoppers are spotted, the hogger reverses to pick up the conductor, then heads for St. Thomas. With auto traffic and potash, it appears the St. Thomas branch should have a pretty secure future. Galt, 57 miles to the west of Toronto on the St. Lawrence and Hudson's Galt sub, is home base for a pair of locals that serve the 11-mile branch to Kitchener, all that remains of the once electrified Grand River Railway and Lake Erie and Northern. With switch list in hand, the day job heads through the yard to lift cars set off by the mainline trains during the night. Once the yard work is complete, they'll head north over the former Grand River Railway to the CN interchange at South Junction in the city of Kitchener. Once part of Canadian Pacific's electric lines, the Grand River Railway provided frequent interurban passenger service throughout the area until 1955. The northbound day job is just passing the site of the old Freeport interurban station. With the interchange cars now set off, the crew heads for Uniroyal Goodrich to do some switching before returning to Toyota's Cambridge assembly plant. A far cry from steeple cabs and 40-foot boxcars, tri-level loads of Corollas are now the lifeblood of the electric lines. "63 miles north of Toronto, extending off CN's Newmarket sub, the Meaford Spur links Barrie and Collingwood. Once a vibrant 52-mile branch that featured local passenger trains as well as the familiar freights, the Meaford sub was cut back from Meaford to Collingwood in the 80s, later downgraded to spur status, and now sees a twice-a-week road switcher originating at Barrie. Coming on duty at Allendale, just south of the Barrie station, the Collingwood's crew will first grab the van, then marshal the small consist, before making their way through the now desolate yard. No longer a CN division point, and its roundhouse long demolished, Allendale is now just a ghost of its former self. Since these shots were taken, CN's Newmarket sub north of the station has been abandoned, and all tracks in this part of the yard have been removed. It's hard to believe that not really that long ago, yard engines and branch line trains once fought for space in the crowded yard. After a quick stop for some coffee to go, it's off to Collingwood, 30 miles to the west of Barrie Yard. .5 miles out of Barrie, the Meaford Spur crosses Canadian Pacific's MacTier subdivision, part of that company's Toronto-Vancouver main line. Although the interlocking is automatic, all CN trains are required to stop, and a member of the crew must manually open the knife switch until their train is completely clear of the diamond. During the days of passenger trains, track speed on the branch was 45 miles per hour, but with years of deferred maintenance due to continual abandonment applications, the present 10-mile-per-hour speed limit makes for a long trip to Collingwood. En route to Collingwood, the train passes through the towns of Angus and Stayner, but unlike better days, the stations and online freight business are history. A number of industries at Collingwood provide most of the Spur's business, and on arrival just under 4 hours after leaving Barrie, the crew begins their switching duties. Once the switching chores are completed, they'll marshal the outbound consist, then retrace the slow path back to Barrie. Aboard the 7043, the hogger keeps the consist within the 10-mile-per-hour speed limit, while a few cars back, in the van, the conductor does the ever-present paperwork and keeps an occasional eye out on the train. While numerous small bridges and culverts are crossed during the 30-mile trip, the prettiest is probably the one spanning the Nottawasaga River, just east of Angus. Slow-speed trains tend to entice drivers to ignore crossing warnings. The crew's comment sums it up pretty well as a school bus driver breaks all the rules at the next crossing.
Oh, my God. Okay, there you go.
Once the CPR Diamond is crossed, it's almost home as the Collingwood job heads for Barrie. And in contrast to the previous two branches, a very uncertain future. Well to the west of Toronto, the Goderich-Exeter Railway operates on former CN track between Stratford and Goderich with a branch to Centralia. Once the domain of typical branch line passenger and freight traffic, these branches gained momentary fame when CN assigned F units to snowplow duty, before ownership of the line passed to the Railtex-owned Goderich-Exeter in 1992. Service on the 24-mile Exeter spur is on an as-required basis, and today, Goderich-Exeter 179 is aided by a leased unit as it heads west to Hensel. Traffic on the Hensel Spur consists mainly of corn, grain, and potash, but other companies along the line occasionally use the railway to bring in raw materials or ship their finished goods. elevators at Hensel is the locals' destination today. So unless plans change, once the switching is completed, their crew will change ends, then head back to Clinton for some additional work along the Goderich spur. With the loads shoved clear, the ordered empties are spotted at their respective locations. Then the units run around to lift the outbound loads. Unlike larger Class 1 railways, the locally managed Goderich-Exeter can respond quickly to customers' needs. This quick, reliable service has seen much local traffic recaptured from trucks. After making some switching moves at Clinton, the road switcher is now eastbound on the Goderich spur. Along this line, the train will work the elevator at Seaforth, then continue east to Mitchell. Winter has always been a challenge to railroaders. The previous day's short thaw, followed by the return of bitterly cold winds, has put switches and derail locks in the grip of ice. A good dose of persuasion and persistence usually wins the battle, though. road switcher now clears the main for the Goderich to Stratford road freight, heavy with cars of salt from the mine at Goderich. One road freight each way per day with extras running on an as-required basis operate between Goderich and Stratford, a former CN division point and location of the Goderich-Exeter's interchange with CN. On arrival at Stratford, the road crew will set off their train, lift the outbound loads, and head for Goderich, thus completing another cycle on this highly successful short line. Extending in a northwesterly direction from the St. Lawrence and Hudson's Galt subdivision at Streetsville is that company's Owen Sound subdivision. The Owen Sound served many smaller communities and once played host to numerous local passenger and freight trains. In winter, the snowbelt north of Orangeville was renowned for its especially tough winters. Snow and strong winds continuously tested the fortitude of the division's railroaders. Once a bustling division point, complete with yard, station, roundhouse, bunkhouse, and lunch counter, the town of Orangeville is located on the edge of southwestern Ontario's snowbelt. While lighter snow fighting equipment was often enough to keep winter at bay south of town, the section from Orangeville to Owen Sound, which the railway abandoned in December of 1995, usually required the powerful force of the wedge plow. Plowing has always been a fascinating side of railroading, and the weather on and preceding February 13, 1995, gave us one last chance to experience it on the 73 miles between Orangeville and Owen Sound. As the units arrive from Toronto Yard to start plow duty, the plow's crew is busy preparing CP 400692, a wedge plow built by Canadian Pacific's Angus Shops in 1926. The plow's blade must be cleaned to allow for the proper flow of snow. Once the units are coupled, airlines to operate the brakes and horn, others to extend and retract the wings and operate the points, as well as jumpers for the headlight, are all connected. Once all the connections are complete, all operating parts of the plow are then checked to the plow foreman's satisfaction. After the train crew has performed a brake test, the plow foreman is also required to make an emergency brake test using the plow's emergency valve. After all, he'll be the eyes of the train crew for much of the trip. With all systems confirmed to be in working order, the plow foreman and his helper climb aboard, and it's off for some snow fighting. The weather has changed dramatically just north of Orangeville, and the cut at Laurel provides Plow Extra 8205 with its first challenge, as the constant winds have plugged the cut with well-packed snow. Once the initial path is cleared, the consist backs through the cut, then attacks it again, this time with the wings extended. After clearing the first 27 miles of the 73-mile run from Orangeville to Owen Sound, the crew arrives at Dundalk, ties down the train for 20 minutes, and heads over for some well-earned hot coffee. Snow sifts into everything when plowing, and the short pause at Dundalk has allowed melting snow to cause traction motor ground relays on the units. For the first few miles until they dry out, the Plow Extra's hogger is kept busy with resets. Now dried out, the units gain speed to attack a snow plug cut, With such restricted visibility, it's up to the plow foreman to let the locomotive engineer know what's required.
Keep her going. Big cut ahead. That's right. We're not going to make it through this cut. Number 8. Yeah, okay. Won't go number 8.
While the units are being totally obscured by snow, aboard the plow, visibility remains pretty good until a deep cut is encountered. There, the entire train will be engulfed in white until punching through. Plowmen must know every inch of the line they're working. Without that knowledge, extended wings can destroy trackside signals, and lowered points can make very short work of crossing planks. The ride quality of a plow is quite rough due to the fact that the lead truck is without springs. This is necessary to keep the blade a constant height above the rail.
Yellow flag for the floor, about 58 or 68 of the full plow, 82.5. Yellow flag. Roger that, yellow flag.
Some cuts require 2 passes to be cleared properly. The first run is usually made with the wings retracted. Once the cut is penetrated, the plow extra reverses for a half mile or so, then hits it again, this time with the wings extended. While a continuous dusting of snow passes a foot or so away from the plow foreman's open window, the locomotives and van continue to be enveloped in white stuff. No wonder after a day of snowplow duty, engine crews often have to be dug out of their units. As tough as plowing remains, there's been quite an improvement since steam days. Back then, the locomotive's windows were totally boarded up, communication was strictly by whistle signal, and every time snow hit the boiler, the resulting steam turned the cab into a Turkish bath. All this made for a less than ideal run for the engine crew. Even with the progress we've made, though, a little duct tape can work wonders as a door seal.
That's really 82, 30 something. It's not really close to that line. And this leader, I can't get it on channel 4. Otherwise,
In just a few more miles, Plow Extra 8205 North will reach Owen Sound. After Ying the train, the crew will book rest for a few hours, then before sunrise, depart south to Orangeville. Only once more will a Plow Extra be called to operate north of Orangeville. 10 months later, At 12:01 a.m. on December 12, 1995, the Owen Sound subdivision north of mile 36.77 was abandoned. 2 days later, crews severed the rails and a stop block was installed. For the Owen Sound sub, the final transition had not been kind.